Welcome back to the Business Simple podcast. I have a really exciting guest with me today, Reece from Recreate Performance. Reece is someone that we do work for. He also, he has an awesome, Recreate's awesome. It's a really cool business. We have a health and wellness thing that we're doing internally with them, and it's been really cool to be on the other side of what we would typically do and be a customer, see the way that they do things and work. It's the response from our team's been fantastic, and it's something where we actually just before this were talking about how we're going to continue and how we're going to develop and keep making better. So Reece is the man. Reece is fucking strong as a person, runs a real cool business, and I think there's going to be some really cool stuff that will come up in this. So thanks for coming, Reece.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolute pleasure. See, I've got this thing where I'm going to try not to say throughout the podcast.
So I'm going to try not to swear. I just heard you drop an F-bomb straight out the gate.
Right,
and I'm like, okay, I've got to be good here.
It was an appropriate F-bomb because you are seriously strong.
We'll take it. We'll track. I'll track your arms. You can track my swear words, and we'll see where we end up.
Great. So for starters, can you please tell me, how does someone go from, I'm assuming you started out as like a personal trainer. Yeah. I'm even keen to go before that and how you got into personal training initially. And then how did you make that jump from personal trainer, selling time, to running a business? Your business's brand reflects you really well, and it's got this cool, approachable, warm feel that you've managed to create. What does that story look like?
Yeah, so if we go back, like growing up, and this is going to sound real cliche, right? But like, I was always like, not bullied at school, but like small, right? So like, I always had this like fear of, I grew up in the North Island in Wanganui, and I had this fear of like getting beaten up, or like this whole thing of like, I need to be strong. Like you said before, like I need to be a strong person mentally, but also, physically to survive, right? Yeah. So, got involved in sport when I was young and really enjoyed playing sport. And obviously, as we have to, we go to school, we get an education and that kind of thing. You get to the end and like all of my friends were going to university and they knew what they wanted to do. And I had no idea, right? But I was already like playing semi-high level rugby and cricket and basketball, and like didn't really know where to focus my attention. So when I got out of school, I had a gap year, and this is actually a funny story as well. I thought I wanted to become a builder.
Yeah.
And my old man was a builder, and he had his own business. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to come work for you. I'm going to be an apprentice. We're going to do building together. And he was like, try not to swear here, but he's like, fuck off. Right? Yeah. He was like, we're not doing that. And I kind of begged him, and I ended up digging holes and building fences for about 6 months until we ended up having a punch-up on a work site in front of like an old lady. And we were actually living together at the time, which actually ended the living arrangement as well. But yeah, so long story short, I was like, I need to go do some study.
Building didn't work?
It didn't work, no. But I know a lot of successful builders now. I'm like, I wonder what the trajectory would have been right if I had gone with somebody that wasn't my dad. Yeah. But anyway, did a 1-year diploma in sport. I was living in Marlborough at the time. Sort of had done the end of my schooling there, and it was actually cool. You know how like you have these people in your life that you're like, man, I got put in front of that person for a reason or somewhat.
Absolutely, I do, yeah.
So yeah, at the time I was playing like under 21 Tasman rugby, right? And there was a lady who was I don't even know what her title was, but say she was like the manager of the college that I was doing the course through. Yep. And her son had done a rugby scholarship at Lincoln University. And she was like, you should put your name down for this and see if you can, go and do that. But I'm like, well, what would I do there? And she's like, well, he did sport management and recreation. And and I was like, all of my friends at that point were either in Dunedin doing sports science who were in the same industry, or they were in Canterbury, studying other stuff. And I was like, you know what, maybe I will go to Canterbury. Maybe I will catch up with those guys and sort of be part of that thing. And yeah, I don't know if she was like, you should put your name down for this because I know the lady who does the scholarships and you'll get one. Yeah. But essentially through that process, I ended up getting a scholarship to Lincoln Uni through rugby. Wasn't a great rugby player, but like the criteria at the time was like, I think you had to be within like the top 100 players in New Zealand in that kind of age bracket. But we took on, this is funny now, I think like all the scholars that go through that program now are like, NZ, like they're going to be super rugby players, right?
Yeah.
We had like 27 scholars, and I was a loose forward, and there was like 7 of us.
Yeah,
so it was like, yeah, they were kind of giving them away at the time. Lincoln was not a great rugby team at the time. It was actually Maryvale Lincoln, but that's a complete another story. But anyway, ended up going there, studied there for 3 years, pre-earthquake Christchurch. And like, you know, like I'm going to try to rush this along a little bit because we're in 2010.
Yeah.
I got a bit of a break where I was working at a gym in the city. It was called the Clarendon Health Club. And it's actually probably the next closest thing, well, the only thing that I can probably ever think that would have been like IHF in 2010. It was a corporate health club in the city. It had spas, it had saunas, lawyers, accountants. It was in the Clarendon Tower, which was like a 14-story building. So it was like a big building. I think they had Duncan Cottrell, they had Cavill Leach, they had Buttle Finlay. There was heaps of, you know, lawyers that are really well established now. Anderson Lloyd, I think, were in there as well. And everything else was in the vicinity. Downstairs, there was Sticky Fingers. It was like a bar downstairs that used to go off. Bangalore Polo Club was like just down the road. So yeah, bit of nostalgia for a few people who think that. But I was there for a year, and I was coaching out of there. I got kind of lucky in terms of, and this is a weird scenario too, but like, so I run a gym now where we have contract personal trainers, right? The guy who owned the gym didn't own the contract to the personal trainers. So the previous owner, we were paying the previous owner rent to be personal trainers in somebody else's gym. A really strange setup, yeah.
He must have just sold the gym.
So when he sold it, yeah, he was like, you can buy the membership or you can buy the contract to the personal trainers. And he was like, well, why would I want that? And he was like, sweet, well, I'll just keep it. So this guy had this like loophole where he was getting paid like $200 a week from like 6 of us. So it was a good little like 50, 60 grand a year for doing nothing. But anyway, yeah, he was like, yeah, I can put you in there, but there's not enough members in there at the moment. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, what's the ratio? And he was like, well, we go like 60-1. So every time we put a new coach into the facility, we need 60 members. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to sell memberships for you, and I'm going to go find you 60 members. And this is kind of funny about what you said before around the corporate thing. Mm-hmm. So I was like, right, we're in the city. Like I'm straight out of university. I've got no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to go buy myself a suit, and I'm going to go start knocking on doors, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to sell corporate packages to like gyms. So I'm like, we're going to do a discounted membership, or we're going to do... I actually think what I did is I wrote up a proposal that was like, if you join on X rate, which is like 10% off or whatever, I'll give you 5 free coaching sessions. And that was how I actually started my business, right? But I went around, I emailed out on the database, I bought the suit, went door knocking, and I like did this for like 3 or 4 weeks and got absolutely nowhere. And then one day there was a guy who was in the gym who was a member. He came up to me and he was like, hey, Reece, I got your email the other day. I'd love to catch up with you for a coffee. And I was like, sweet, okay, cool. His name was, I remember his name. His name was Mike Finlayson, and he was the CEO of Horticulture ITO, which was like a government department for like all the like arboring and like stuff like that. So it was like an education provider for the forestry industry. So random, completely random. Anyway, we go for a coffee, and he's like, sweet, I want to buy 30 memberships for my staff. And I was like, I'm like mind blown, right? I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, sweet. And from that 30 memberships that we signed up, so memberships at the time you paid up front, so like $1,000 for a membership. Mm-hmm. I got because it was we were doing a 10% discount, I think it was like $900. So like for me as like a 19-year-old, maybe 20-year-old kid, I was like, I couldn't fathom the fact that some guy was just about to give us like 30 grand.
Yeah.
I was just like, but it's not his money either. Like it's probably government money.
Still lots of money.
Yeah. And then from that, I did the 5 coaching sessions with all of their staff, and I ended up like with like 10 clients.
Yeah, right.
So like made the business owner stoked, because he was like, you just brought me 30 grand, and also go fill your boots. He said 60-1, but he gave it to me at 30. So
as he should. Yeah, after you turn up with that.
And then he's like, do you still want to keep doing sales for me? I'm like, I think I'll just PT now, which is kind of sad. But I sort of did it for a wee while. But long story short, 2010, right? So earthquake hits in 2011. So I probably had 12 months of coaching in that facility and had built up a pretty good business with like 20 or 30 clients, and then earthquake hits. So it's like, what do we do, right? And I was going to gap it. I was going to run away. I was like, I'm going to Aussie. My mum lives in the Gold Coast, and I went and stayed with her as like a bit of a reprieve from the earthquake stuff. And her partner actually at the time, my stepdad, partner at the time, he's passed away, so it's a little bit of a confusing one. But anyway, he said, you got to go back. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, there's people there who are displaced out of their work, out of their routine. He's like, what is your job? And he's like, you show people how to take care of their health and exercise. Like, why would they not need it now? And I was like, that's a really interesting thing. So Contacted all my clients. I was like, yo, I can train you in the park. I can train you at your house. I don't have a facility. I've got nowhere to go, but nobody does. And to be fair, from that conversation that I had with him, things really started moving forward really, really quickly. So luckily, I sort of hopped around a couple of different places. I had these corporate clients who I was trying to fit into. Like we went to Snapbush Inn, which was just by the university, and it was a nightmare. I was there for like 2 weeks. I actually ended up at Show Place for a little bit, which is where Roddy, Ash's husband, I was in there with him for a little bit. He was coaching there. But it was temporary. They were like, you can come in and you can see people here, but there's no long-term position for you here. And I was like, that's cool. And yeah, kind of fell on my feet a little bit. Found a space that I could coach out of probably midway through that year. I think the earthquake hit in February. I think I was sort of in there by July. And it was sort of around sort of Phillipstown area, like Chum Street, that kind of. And there was no gyms on the east side. And it went off. Like, it was crazy. Like, within 12 months, I hired 2 staff to subcontract coaching under me. And then from there, it kind of took off. Like not took off. Like, we say stuff like that. It was moved. Like, yeah. So that's when I guess I decided that I'm like, okay, cool. I don't want to be on the floor coaching 10, 12 hours every day. That's like not sustainable. But I need to find ways that I can leverage and have other people work under me, and sort of, it's the whole sort of buy back your time mentality, right? But yeah, it took a long time to work my way out of needing to trade time for dollars, like you said before, and get to a point where I could run a team and mentor them and sort of with what we have now. So I think it was like 7 years that I was there, and it kind of got to a point. I think by then I had 5. Maybe 6 coaches working under me, and we were doing group training. We were boot camping in the park. We were hiring spaces. We were doing stuff at Penny's barbershop, and we're getting covered in hair, doing bear crawls all over the floor and stuff, and like sort of working with other businesses. Or we would even go to like empty buildings that were not leased, and we would like do stuff out of there until they got leased. And like, yeah, we got to a point where we needed our own space, and like you said before, it's like that leap of faith, right? It's like, what's it going to take? How far do I need to go to get to a point where I've got this thing here, which is doing well? And a lot of people were like, oh, well, when's enough? You got this many staff, and you're doing this, and you're making good money, and and I'm like, yeah, but I've just like always had this thought that I wanted to have my own space. So in 2019 we started working on what is now Recreate Performance. I went over to Australia and kind of looked at the gyms and stuff that were around there at the time that were like, okay, this is a model that I could take. And at the time there was things like F45 that, well, we sort of went through the rise and the fall, right? So like private coaching was the thing when I first started, and it was the only thing. Boot camps kind of came along, they had their time, and then with group training, F45 came in, and it kind of rolled us for a wee bit. Like, I think it was probably like 2012 or 2013, took a lot of personal training clients away, but I guess what kind of happened over time is people get, broken down from doing repetitive movements and stuff like that that's not specific to them. And then we had a lot of those clients coming back as well. So it was like a little bit of a to and fro. But what that did show us is like the community and the connection. So it's like the ability to get people together in a room and do the same thing and work towards a common goal was really, really important. And obviously the emergence of CrossFit at the same time. So CrossFit was kind of like the extreme, and F45 was kind of like this is for anyone. And then so we were like, okay, cool, how do we meet that in the middle? So obviously worked with a lot of sports teams and stuff through my career, and I was like, how do we make that like sports team environment where everybody that's in this room is kind of like working towards a common goal, like we're trying to win the championship or whatever it is together, be that feeling better physically, mentally, weight loss, whatever they're going for, but like kind of understanding that they're all doing it together. So yeah, definitely went over and tried different places, tried different things, tried to understand what was out there already in the market. And then I think we're probably one of the first, especially in Christchurch. I think it's definitely been done well in Auckland and Wellington prior, but like to have a group strength and conditioning program that didn't have ollie lifting like CrossFit or gymnastics, but also could be done by the majority of people. Right, it's still, I would still say it's an intermediate level program. I wouldn't say it's beginner, but if you have the right mindset and you're willing to work, then it kind of works.
And we saw that when like I said, but it's cool being on the other side, especially before doing something like this, is we saw all different people with all different base fitness levels all together doing something, and they're doing the same movements with different weights, and they're doing things like that, but first week's a little tough, second week's a little tough. Third week, everyone kind of starts to find a little bit of a rhythm. Fourth week, people are real into it. People are putting more weight on the bars. People are doing things like that. And they're starting to get that feedback loop of like, if I put X in, I take X out. And then like the community element of it. Like my team's not small, but it's not massive. But I don't have time to sit with each of my staff for an hour a day or 45 minutes a day and talk to them or do something that creates connection. All of a sudden, I'm like, in a puddle of sweat with like people that I haven't talked to, and I'm like in a prone hole wanting to die, and I'm like
breaks the barriers, right?
People are there, right? And there's no boss, not boss thing. There's no anything. You're just involved in something that's real cool.
It's now a good time for me to mention that the receptionist be you in that prone hold, or is that not that?
I wouldn't say bet.
Oh, actually, it was a draw. It was a draw.
No, but
we timed it to 3
minutes.
Yeah, nah, she did well.
I thought...
To be fair, you actually stole her from me. I had her first, and then now she works for you. So technically, she was already pre-trained, I guess.
But to be fair, if there was something in it and we had to continue going, she would have outlasted me. No, she had. I was.
I reckon we could do this. I reckon we could pick this up.
3 minutes is a long ass.
You've given me some ammo here, right?
I was on my very last legs at 3 minutes, and she hides it well, but she didn't look like she was hurting like I was hurting. Yeah, but how cool is that?
It's cool, right? So, and we've done it before in situations where, like you have other companies where you have like law firms with partners and stuff that would never really interact with like a office junior, and the office junior's like schooling them in some workout, and it's like for me it's just like it brings me joy because it's like it's what I call like sweat equity, right? It's like if you haven't trained and you're not physically capable to do those kind of things, it's like status and money can't buy that, it's work ethic, right? So it's like, but it's towards fitness, and like, I've just been away from work for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's kind of given me a bit of a perspective around like, and like you said before, like, I've been involved in a lot of like sporting stuff, and I was away for, coaching for New Zealand for powerlifting, and like, that was to an extreme of what my job has allowed me to do. But like my perspective when I came back was like, I really need to focus in on like, how do we help people like move better, do less, but like achieve the same amount, and like be like sort of happy and content with their like programming and routine. And like it was kind of the complete opposite of like what I was doing when I was away. It was like, this is like the extreme, when you get to the best of whatever in your sport. And I was like, all I could really think about was like, and what is probably most important to me is like what I call everyday athletes, like just people who want to be fit and healthy and make that their everyday life. So that was kind of interesting what you said there around the different people and what you can kind of provide in a room with such varying levels of ability.
And your ability to create, like, not only is it good for culture, but also it's good for every other part of that person and being involved in your business. Like that I remember there was a morning I came in, and I probably got here at like 8, maybe. And there would have been, we started at 8:30, like that's start time. And usually there's people in the office from like 7:45ish, but it's like 1 or 2. And I got here just before 8, and there would have been like 9 people in the office, and they were all people that were going to recreate that afternoon. And so they were in like earlier, like hustling, trying to get through their stuff, and like they obviously really valued that opportunity to go later on in the day. So they're doing things differently, and like that's not prompted by me. I was like, I'm willing to invest in you guys because I believe in you all being healthier, and so I was like, don't worry about the time thing, don't worry about that stuff, just this is there for you if you want it. And to see them then change the way they did things to meet both because they valued it, I was like, oh, this is going both ways, like they're getting it now. And you see people like when they're going to the gym a few days a week, they change. Like I had about 3 weeks off with like this. I was sick, Jen was sick, baby wasn't sleeping, I just carnage. And I've trained the last couple of days, and I'm like, oh, I'm back.
You turned a corner, right?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I had that too, going away, super stressful couple of weeks, and obviously trying to run a business and being overseas is really difficult. And I was like, you just need to rip the Band-Aid off and get back in. But like mentally, I actually got in this space where a lot of people have probably been before, and they can resonate with this. It's like, I know I need to do it, but the thought of doing it seems really difficult, and then like we have this expectation that we like need to push ourselves really hard, and we need to be where we were previously, that we almost like don't do it because of that, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to be as good, so there's no point in doing it.
A few weeks off hurts,
Well, biological laws, right? So like I always think about like the science side of exercise. Like it states that like if you have 2 weeks off exercise, it will take you 2 weeks to get back to where you were before you took that time off, right? So it's like to create that intensity, you're going to be 2 weeks ahead. So if you try to come back at that intensity, like Mother Nature's going to kick your ass, pretty much. It's like, yeah, you'll either get really sore, you'll get really tired, you'll get burnt out. There'll be some symptom. It's like distress causes disease, right? So it's like, yeah, it's like if you're working really hard all the time and people are like, oh, I just need to exercise. Sometimes they forget that exercise is another stress. It's not a de-stress, it's a eustress. I think that's the term, right? So it's like it just adds to the... So like if your mental load is like 10 and your physical is like 3 because you haven't been doing anything, but you max out at like 18 is like the multiplier, or I don't know what it is. But like you go 10 out of 10 on exercise, when you're 10 out of 10 mental, you will break. So, like there's no...
Yeah, let's sit there for a second if that's okay. Because I've got a thought on this that I hadn't had prior to this training block we did with you guys, right? Where like I was doing 3 sessions a week. So we were doing like an upper, and this is maybe a little bit more exercise technical, but maybe some people are in a boat like me where they're struggling to juggle work and exercise 100%. And then being a dad at the same time adds a whole other set of complications, right?
That's the emotional side. Because you're thinking that you should be available at home. Yeah. Plus you need to work. Plus you need to take care of yourself, right? It's tricky. Yeah.
And so what surprised me a lot, and by a lot I mean like I was fucking confused. Oh, there's an F-bomb. I was confused. Like, I was
you don't get tracked on them though.
Yeah, right.
You're the ums.
I've been pretty good with those two.
I actually haven't picked one up.
So I go to doing 2 strength sessions a week, right?
Yeah.
1 upper body, 1 lower body. This is from my thoughts around what a week of training should look like. It's like legs, back, chest, arms, shoulders, and 5 different days.
Yeah.
I felt
a bro split.
The bro split. I'm full bro split through and through.
I've got no problem with it.
Yeah, and I think genuinely I was making more progress physically doing 2 strength sessions, because remember on the days when I'm doing that strength session, I'm probably also doing some form of high intensity like Muay Thai or something like that, or I might be hitting pads for an hour in the morning or something like that as well. 2 sessions a day plus real high workload during the day plus dad duties at night, and I felt like it was going to make me pop.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I went to this and I didn't feel like I was going to pop so much anymore, and I wasn't fatigued from it. It was moving me forwards rather than backwards. How much of your, and I know that because you do a lot of stuff with like people who are more high performance minded, and I think people like that have this mentality where they just go more is better automatically.
I fucking hate that saying. Oh.
Yeah. There we go. I got one.
Hey. I dislike that saying.
Yeah.
And the reason is like more isn't better, better is better, right? So it's like what you were just explaining then is what I call like we have the ability to have what we call maximal recoverable volume. So like the amount of stuff you can fit into a week without dying, right? And you can live pretty close to the edge. You can work your way up to 95%, of physical damage, but also neural damage, right? So you got to remember every time that we train, our brain gets tired as well. So we talk about like neural fatigue, and that's kind of a whole another conversation. But if we're training at maximal recoverable volume, it will only last for a certain period of time before we have to either intentionally slow down, or your body will slow you down, right? Yeah. You'll start getting these fatigue symptoms, like grip strength will go, obviously poor sleep, irritability, all those kind of things, right? So where I like to program, even for my elite, anyone, to be honest, like this is my whole kind of ethos and values around it, is like we need to do what we call like the minimal effective dose. Yeah. So it's like if it's 3 days a week and that's all we've got, how do we fit as much as possible into those 3 days that's going to have the same effect as if I had 6 or 7, right? And what you'll find is, because most people will do it, say like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or however it falls in their week, and actually if you even did it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't really matter because you're still getting the same amount of volume spread over the week. You have more recovery days in there. So the recovery allows you to work harder each time you train. The problem is when you're working at maximal recoverable volume, so at that like 95 to 100% on the breaking point all the time, you've done legs this day and then you can't walk, you've done back that day and then you can't straighten your arms, and then you've done chest, and then you're kind of like by day 3, you're like, I really just don't want to go back to the gym anymore. Yeah. You have, without the recovery, you can break it into as many small parts as you like. That's why it kind of starts at like big muscles down to small muscles when you're doing those kind of 5 or 6 day splits. It's not as sustainable, right? Because you don't take into account the mental and emotional side. And the biggest thing, and especially when you're working with people long term and you want them to create sustainable habits so that they can do stuff forever, it's like, if this program is killing you right now and you can't wait for it to end, it's probably too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
it's like 75 hard and stuff like that. And I'm not bagging that kind of stuff because it's a great way to get people doing stuff. But it's like, if you change their exercise, you change their nutrition, you make them walk, you make them read, you make them do all these extra things. It's like, as soon as they finish, they're like, which ones of these can I get rid of?
Yeah.
Alcohol, another thing, right? They're like, fuck, I can't wait to get on the piss again. I just swore.
So let's sit here just for a second. I've done 75 hard 3 times.
Yeah.
Really good for some stuff. Those things aren't. When I did 75 hard, I needed to realign habits dramatically. So I started in March of the year. I hadn't cooked so far that year. That year I hadn't cooked food once.
So we're working hard.
Yeah, we're drinking 4 days a week, probably. Gymming 1 to 2 times a fortnight, probably. Out of shape, like I'm pushing 95 kilos at my weight, and I'm probably with no muscles. I'm probably sitting here at 87-ish right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm out of shape. My energy levels are really bad. All of those sorts of things. I needed a really dramatic shake up to my environment to try to retrain some habits. Did 75 hard. I lost 18 kilos, of which I gained back a bunch of. It was a dramatic version of things. I tried to balance volume a little bit. So like I didn't run for my outdoor workouts. I walked because I knew I'd explode. There was a number of my indoor workouts where I would just jump on a bike and just bike for 45 minutes. And it was more about mentally ticking it off than trying to, and then there was probably like 5 to 6 workouts a week with real high intensity, and the rest of it was pretty much just like I'd do yoga on Sundays. So my Sunday every week used to be 45-minute outdoor work, 45 minutes of yoga in a class. So it's like actually active recovery.
You create balance around what you're doing,
But good for me because I was not the person that I should have been at that time. 100%. I've then gone back and done it 2 times since, and every time I do it, I am getting less out of it than the time before because my habits are so different now. I don't need to be reminded that exercising makes me feel good. If I feel like shit, I think, how am I eating? How much exercise I've been doing? How much water have I been drinking? Am I learning stuff? And if I'm not checking any of those boxes, I can do that without needing to do it twice a day or to set it. Like I read 30 pages last night because I've got this thing where I'm turning my phone off at 8 p.m. and I'm turning the TV off by 9. And I was like, I'm not ready to go to sleep. I wasn't aiming for a goal. I wasn't aiming for a goal, right? But then if I don't read tonight, I don't really care because there's not. So I think I agree with you 100%. I think it suits a time. And I think it's something that you should be able to do. I think it's good for mental strength, and that's the thing that I gain from it most beyond everything else. And I talked a lot of people into doing it because I was like, this changed who I am as a person. And there were varying things that people got out of it. But I was really strict on my diet, for example. So I ate the same thing every day for 75 days. I cooked every meal. And so that's why I lost so much weight. And so then I was like, so having some structure in my diet's really good for me rather than just ordering Uber Eats 3 times a day every day. That's interesting. And so then I was like, now when I go away, I appreciate food a little bit more. Before I didn't really care about food. And I kind of had this mental thing where I was like, well, if I'm going to sit in the office till 9 p.m, I might as well have 4 whiskeys and get a burger dropped off because I'm here working late and that's the important thing. And then I realized that the important thing is doing everything as well as you can, not just excelling in one area.
But it's the quality of work too, right? Like
if you're drunk.
Well, but if you're fit and healthy, right? And like you have clarity, and it's kind of what we sort of look at with the wellness programs and stuff like that too. It's like presenteeism, right? It's like you can work for 12 hours a day, but how much of that is efficient, right? And we all know when we're eating well, training, sleeping well, and they're probably the main ones, you're going to be more productive, you know. You've got a young baby, right? So it's like every time you have a bad sleep, and this is the thing that annoys me a little bit, like wearables and consumables and those kind of things. Is like, oh no, I've had a bad sleep today, so my day's going to be terrible. And it's like, no. Like, you're an adult, you're tougher than that. Like, you know, if your watch tells you that you've had a 40% sleep or whatever, you can still have a great day. You know, don't let that dictate your life. And I often say to people that often talk to me about sleep and sleep patterns and stuff like that, I'm like, look at it at the end of the day, but self-assess. So it'd be like, oh man, I had a bad sleep last night. I'm not going to look at my app to tell me that, but I'm going to see if I can have a great day instead. So it's like almost flipping it on its head, right? And yeah, I just think so many people buy into the, I can do this for and I'm not talking 75 hard now, I'm just talking about like set length programming. And that's why like marketing in the fitness industry like kicked ass, like 8-week challenges, 6-week challenges, 4-week challenges, whatever it is. It's like, it's a time frame, and most people have taken that time frame based on a extrinsic motivation. Yeah. So it's like, I need to do this for the next 4 weeks so that I can get X, Y, and Z result, right? Yeah. But it's like, hang on, if you had have just said, tomorrow I'm going to start consistently exercising and doing 3 sessions a week and eating well for the rest of my life because I want to, that would be more, there's more chance of them doing that forever than what there is of them saying, okay, this is over in 30 days and I can just go back to doing exactly what I was doing. And we saw it, man. We saw this, we ran this program back in the day. We put a body on the line. It was like, if you lost 5 kilos in 30 days, we did it for free. Mm-hmm. And we did it because we got testimonials, right? So we take before and after pictures. We would show people losing 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 15 kilos, 20 kilos, because they could continue to, if they passed, they could do it again, right? But we created this is going to sound really bad, but like this yo-yo system where people would lose 5 kilos, gain 5 kilos. Yeah. I got to do it again because the only way that I can do it is do it again. And they become like junkies, man. They'd be coming back to us like, can I do that program again? I want to do that program. We're like, no, you need to actually just start exercising and being healthy. It's like, but I need that diet and I need you to tell me and I need you to do this. And it's like, at the end of the day, like as a health professional, like a fitness expert, I don't know what you call yourself, but it's like, my job is to teach you how to do this properly. It's not to teach you how to fucking cheat the system, Yeah.
And that's 3. That is the thing that caused me, and I've
it would be exactly the same with digital marketing. So I don't want to interrupt, but it's like we need to do a campaign because we need X amount of sales, and then they get the sales, and then they stop, they're like, James, I need you because I need to do another campaign. You're like, nah, man, we need to do a strategy, and we need to have this running while that's running, so that does this, and but they just need the instant gratification.
It's the same with everything in the world.
Oh, totally.
Like it's the same thing, and at the end of the day, it really comes down to, if you do something for the right reasons, you'll be consistent and last. And if you do it for the wrong reasons, you'll make impulsive, short-term, motivated decisions that will not serve you long-term.
How many times have you done that in business? The amount of times that I've been
a million.
I'm going to do this and I'm going all in and we're going to do it now. And then I'm like 2 or 3 weeks into it, I'm like, why did someone not stop me from doing this? But it's like, you can only learn from what you've experienced, right? So like if you don't know what the fall feels like and you go through life and everything works perfectly for you, like it wouldn't be, I'm not saying it would be much fun, it just wouldn't be authentic. Yeah. Right? Like you got to fall on your face a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some big ones. I've had some doozies.
So every now and then you just need to be bitch slapped by your own life.
Yeah, and then hopefully you learn from it. And like I had something happen today and I caught myself walking out of the room like, that's a really good idea. And then I was like, I did that a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it cost me $50,000. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I currently considering doing that? Like, am I just
but this time it might punishment? Work. Yeah. But hang on, what if this was that?
Serial optimism. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think it's the same with marketing, and I also think people who approach marketing with I have an immediate problem I need to solve rather than I want to build something long term, they get different outcomes.
It needs to be a strategy, right?
Well, and 1 in 10 people that go out for like a short term win get it. Sure. Yeah. Maybe 2 out of 10, maybe 3 out of 10. But they always wind up back in the same spot. And the ones that go, I want to do this over the next 12 months, 24 months, they 10 out of 10 get there. And so this is the thing that's different.
It's the sustainability, right? It's the incremental gain. It's the same as health. It's the same as investing money. It's the same as all kinds of things, right? It's just like, sometimes you got to wait. And it sucks. Like, it's what's the... I'm going to get this wrong and someone's going to tell me off, but I think it's called the Stanford marshmallow test. I don't know if you've heard of this. It was like it was a study done in the 50s, and it could be Harvard, I'm thinking now, but I'm just going to run with Stanford because it sounds better. Yeah. They got a sample of kids that were like 5 years old, and they put them in a room, and it was all around instant gratification. So they put a marshmallow down in front of a child, and they were like, if you eat this, if you don't eat this marshmallow now, we'll give you another one. But they never put a time frame on it. So like some kids would just sit there looking at this marshmallow, just waiting, and other ones would just be like, nah, fucking, and eat it, right? And they studied these kids over their whole life, And the ones that ate the marshmallow first were less successful than the ones that waited for the second marshmallow.
Yeah.
And I think the time was like, they weren't told the time, but it was like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So they had to sit there and just be like, oh man, I really want to eat that. But it's such a good, I guess, analogy to like life, but also like the fact that like, I am a marshmallow eater, right? So like, if you put that down in front of me and be like, you're going to get 2 in whatever time frame, it's gone.
There was another, and you may have heard this, but there was another, and this is an Alex Hormozy thing that I heard somewhere. I think it was a reel that I watched. There's essentially 3 traits that they can track across people that are successful. There's 3 like similar characteristics, and they expected when they did this study to find that they were all fit, or that they all got up at 5 a.m, or that they all were, like you have this archetype of who you see as being successful, but then when you actually go out into the world and you look at the people that are wealthy, it doesn't meet that. It's not the same people you see on Instagram. It's different. There's 3 traits. Yeah, because they're busy. There's 3 traits, right? So basically, hyper successful people, I think they were taking a net worth of $3 million or more, or 1.5 or more, or something like that. Cripplingly insecure, that's one. God complex, so basically really worried about not meeting their own expectations, unreasonably high expectations of themselves, essentially believe the whole world revolves around them, they can do anything they want, and impulse control was the third one. And so
they had it or they didn't have it?
Had extremely good impulse control.
There you go.
Yeah. An ability to delay gratification was the third. And so when you think about those 3 things, you're like, all of those check out, because I know a lot of people that would not fit the 5 a.m. club ripped bill, but they think they're the shit. Yeah. They're really worried, and you can tell they're really worried about not being the shit, and they're really good at delaying gratification, and they all tend to do pretty well.
Yeah. And I think it all comes down to like, often I work with a lot of people who are successful in business and they have a lot going on in their lives, and like, I think it's a choice. Like it literally is. It's like, I can choose to be wealthy or healthy. And I know that kind of sounds weird because it rhymes and I didn't mean to do that, but it's like wealth and success often take over, I think, in a part of most people's brains to taking care of themselves. Yeah. And then they'll get to like a crisis point where they're like, okay, cool, I haven't done this and I need to do it. And then they're like, but I can't do it on my own and I need help. And I think that's absolutely fine. I think a lot of the people that I know who are in my industry that focus too much on health are not good at running a business, right? Yeah. They're just like very... almost like you said, God complex or narcissistic or whatever it is. And like, I've mentored a lot of coaches over the years, and I'm like, I always say to them, like, your business is not about you. It's if you're posting stuff about yourself and workouts and all that stuff all the time, it's like nobody actually gives a fuck. Yeah. I'm gonna swear now because I'm comfortable. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I often laugh when I have somebody come to me and like, you've seen their social media presence, and then they're like, oh, hey, I need help with this thing. And I'm like, oh, from the outside looking in, it looks like you've got it all sorted. But the outcome or the, I guess, the focus has been so much on them and what they can do, they don't actually know how to give that to other people, which is really interesting too. Yeah. But also, too, it's created this thing where people can niche down into like people like themselves. Yeah. And then that creates, and especially in the fitness industry, especially with online coaching, the ability to make infinite amount of money without having a huge amount of knowledge. Yeah. Which is really interesting, too. Yeah.
And somewhat deregulated, because there's not the
same. The fitness industry is like the Wild West, man. It's like you can be a really good marketer and terrible at fitness and make a lot of money. So, but a lot of industries are the same, right? Like.
So... That was a good
segue.
Yes. So we're bouncing between spaces, trying things. We're seeing businesses grow. We've got this corporate stuff happening. There's things kind of moving in the right direction. How do we jump from there to in the location? Like, obviously there's a big gap between, you got your facilities that are awesome. Like, how does that happen? I think, did you commit to the space in COVID? Is that right?
Pre-COVID. But we had trouble getting through council. Yeah. So, it took a lot longer than what I expected. And this is the thing too, when you've never leased a space before, you're like, oh, well, if we just, sign the paperwork on this date, we should be able to start within 2 or 3 weeks, right? So I think we were delayed around 6 months. which meant that we opened in January of 2020. So it meant that we had 2 months of trading before COVID.
Nice.
So luckily for us, though, I had 10 years of past business experience and goodwill, and the coaches that I had previously working for me had decided to come and work for us again. And like, yeah, we had around 100 customers after that 2-month period from our launch. And with the first lockdown, especially, it was like that whole support local thing. So like everyone was happy to continue to pay. We went online and reached out to people, and like I actually just spent more time ringing people and checking in with them, like rather than being like, hey, I understand that you probably want to exercise or don't want to exercise or whatever. So I just actually want to see how you are. Like, is everything all good? Do you need something dropped to you? Can we do anything? Which I think actually really helped build our community in that initial part. And then also the whole nation got healthy, right? So everyone was out running and walking and doing workouts in the park or all those kind of things that were going on. And then so when we reopened in March, mid to late April, I think we only had 6 weeks, right, for that first lockdown. We boomed. And we had time to... Everyone's on social media, right? They're all looking at marketing and stuff like that. So we were quite lucky that we created some content and we were continually putting stuff out all the time. I think we got up to around 150 or 160 members before the next lockdown, which was August. And that one got us good.
Yeah.
And we went I actually made a fatal mistake, and you talk about like things that you did in your business and stuff like that. I sent an email out based on a recommendation from an advisor that I had at the time to be like, cool, if anyone wants to like cancel now, essentially because of financial reasons, we're happy to cancel, no questions asked. We lost like 30 members in like one email, and I was like, damn. And that hurt. And then so we probably dropped, I don't even know, we were growing at the time, so it didn't really matter too much, but like our cash flow significantly dropped. And then when we reopened, it was slower that time around, because I think by then a lot of people weren't getting that 20% top up from their employer, that kind of had finished. And then, I don't know, we just kind of got a little bit more savvy with what we're doing. I hired some really good people in good places, and I don't know, the first 2 or 3 years of the business is like a blur. And we grew completely organically, so we did no paid ads, but we did a lot of like community-based workouts, and we did a lot of like giveaways online, and we did a lot of stuff around that kind of thing. But we also like had a real cool culture where like everyone that was kind of working there was sort of had to start again from scratch all the time. So it was like we were all trying to build a business really, really quickly, and we all kind of like leaned off each other in terms of like private coaches anyway, or personal training. I have a bit of a hang up on the word personal training. I don't know why I don't like it, because I think it sounds like you're a prostitute. It's like you trade time for dollars. Like you come hang out with me and you get your happy time and then you go away. So I call it private coaching, but anyway, that almost sounds worse when I think about it. But yeah, long story short, we got to around 300 members in 2022, 2023, and we were stuck, right? And that was where I was like, okay, I'd done some paid ads and stuff before in the past and really struggled with it because I didn't really understand it. And I was like, right, this is something I need to learn, right? So I kind of stepped out of the trainer on the floor, and by then we'd kind of set up great systems. We're running 7 or 8 classes a day. It was hectic. It was going really, really well, but because we'd lost a lot of cash flow from those lockdowns, I was like, okay, cool. I need to do something. Like projected, like 300 to 350 was going to be good. And then now it was kind of looking more like 400 to 450. And I didn't know if we could fit that in our space either. And that was the thing. I was like, man, this is going to be hard. But yeah, I just, and like anything, it's like, I can't teach what I haven't experienced. So like, I just tried to get to know ads the best I could. And I started out, and you've probably seen this before, people like, I'm getting like $80 leads, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then like I was just testing stuff and changing stuff and like reading articles and watching videos, stuff like that. We got it down to like a bit of a process where it was returning its money, but it was probably costing me money. And then so leaned on other people to sort of help me in that area. And then obviously over time we got to a point where we grew to around 450 members late 2023. And then now I think like the industry is interesting now. Like we're seeing a lot of gyms that offer group training fall over. And like in the last, I think 6 months here in Christchurch alone, I know of 4 or 5 different facilities that have gone under. Right. And it's because of the cost of living. And we can all understand that. Man, I was at the grocery store yesterday. I watched a lady put like a $500 shop through, and I was like, damn, that must suck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm a family of 3, but she was maybe a family of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened in 2020 or 2022. You know, that would have been $250 probably for the same shop.
Yeah.
She did have some Halloween treats in there though, so maybe.
Yeah.
And a couple of bottles of wine too, but we won't judge on that. But I guess what I'm saying is like, when the market is tough, and a lot of people will be experiencing this right now, it's like you have to get better with your staff, your culture, or you have to get better at like sales, marketing, and process, right? There's like, I would never roll over and die, and I would never outwardly be like, man, this is really hard. But like, I think for me, outside of COVID, the current situation is probably harder than a global pandemic. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're probably noticing that with customers too, right?
Well,
and certain industries, I think, will feel it more, right?
Marketing sits in a funny spot because for every business that's pulling back to be conservative, there's a business that's dialing things up to try take over.
Totally.
So like, what's been good for us is we've attracted more customers that think like you and me. Where I'm like,
the more you spend, the more you save.
Yeah, and like when it's, I suppose that's maybe it. Yeah. When it's hard, you go harder.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works. I'm like, I will never roll over. So I'm like, right. So the pie's smaller, we just need a bigger chunk. That's the way that it works. And and so we're finding more people like that. We're also finding that people are a lot more critical of what they do, which means we've got to be on our A game. But it also means that if other people aren't on their A game, we get some real cool opportunities that come through.
And you know, when you're good at what you do and you provide a good service, you're going to attract those same kind of people.
Yeah. So it's been overarchingly hard, but good.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same with you. It's like your systems get better, your people get better, your team gets better.
We're working 3 times as hard for the same outcome. But there's going to come a day where that goes, right?
And you reap the rewards from it. Yeah. And so that's probably late next year, I think. We've done, and like I was talking with someone today about a property we own up in Auckland, and I was like, I've been topping this thing up for 2 years.
This thing is just needs to go.
We were going to sell it, right? Yeah. And I'm like, why would I sell now? It's only just about to get good. Like all of a sudden, I don't need to top it up anymore.
Someone would buy it now, though. Like 6 months ago, they may not have.
Someone would buy it now.
Change of government, and like there's a lot of positive things happening.
Yeah.
But there's also still that overarching feeling of doom. I think. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard. People don't have money. That's the and like, don't get me wrong, people do, but like the overarching trend is that stuff's pretty tight out there. Yeah. And I can understand why it would be, because like
doesn't that just mean you have to level up? What? You know, like you have to be better than everyone. Like I'm not saying I never think I'm better than anyone else. That's probably not the right word, but it's like, if you can provide a really good service that people like and appreciate, it will be harder for them to let it go. You know, like if you start dropping the ball and doing things that are uncharacteristic, or I don't know. I have a funny thought, and I'll share it because
this is what we're here for.
Circle of truth. People will put up with a certain amount of like discomfort in a service for a certain amount of time, and I often do. I don't know. I like to. I'm a bit of like an observer, right? Like I watch stuff, and I often talk to clients of mine who are going through this process, right? Where they're like, we work with this company and they did this. Like they'll tell me of a story of something that like upset them or annoyed them or whatever. But like then they'll be like, oh, but they'll continue on, because it's almost like a business transaction is almost like a relationship, right? Yep. So it's like they can treat me a certain way until I get to a point where I get upset and I leave and go somewhere else, right? I feel like that people's tolerance of that is disappearing.
Zip.
Yeah. There's none. As soon as you step out of line and you do something, they're like, oh, even in our industry, like I'm training coaches and trying to teach them how to, run a successful personal training business, they drop the ball on one little thing, like a reach out when they were supposed to contact someone, or, a reminder for something, and like they're gone. Like, whereas before, like, I don't know, it's going to sound really bad, but I never sent anyone reminder messages, because I was just like, hey, this is your time. This is when we train. I will see you then. Otherwise, if I don't hear from you, like, I'll presume you're dead. Right? Yeah. But times have changed with technology too, right? Like there's so many different ways that we can automate things, and people expect more, right? Like a higher level of service. Yeah, I think.
So you mentioned before the whole being the best thing, and this is something that I did want to talk about, was you guys have a really strong position in a really congested industry. Where does that come? Like, where does the brand identity and ideas and stuff? Where does that come from?
Interesting conversation. I think, like, we'll just look at the industry as a whole, and a lot of people get into like personal training, or they think that it's a job that they'd like to do because it's going to be easy. They think that they can make some quick money and potentially not work a lot. Like, I mean, I had a conversation with a guy one day who was a boyfriend of a girl who was a coach for me, and he was like, "Oh man, you must love being a personal trainer," word I don't like, because you could probably just sneak off every day and go play tennis at lunchtime. And I'm like, have you seen my diary? Like, at that point in time, I was working like 12, 14-hour days back to back with sometimes no lunch break, so that I could put money away so that I could start my own facility, right? So I was like in this like, work is the most important thing in the world. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I've never played tennis in my life, and also like I don't even schedule breaks. Like, I was banking on cancellation. There was a time in my life where I was so booked up with coaching that I would have people on a wait list for the day. So we're doing half-hour sessions, right? Would start at like 5:30 in the morning and go till like 7 at night. And I wouldn't book lunch breaks because I knew, based on like the 18 to 20 appointments that I had, that 2 or 3 people wouldn't come. So I would get breaks then. I just didn't know when they would be. And then I had a wait list of people that I could be like, okay, cool, I can instantly slot them in. So there was times that I could get double paid as well. So like the person had cancelled within 24 hours, and then I could put someone else in on top, and I was just like rubbing my hands. But like, I don't, and it's weird, like I'm waiting for the day that I meet another coach that is kind of like that, you know, like I haven't hired anyone like that, maybe one person, and he was a killer, and he went off and managed other gyms elsewhere because he just had that mindset. But yeah, I find it really hard now, and like I was saying before, it's a really easy, not an easy qualification to get, but it's not standardized in New Zealand. There's no standardization to who can be a coach and who can't. I think in Australia there is, but yeah, it's still a little bit dicey. So I guess what I'm saying is like the quality of what you can get from a trainer that's done 10 years of experience versus 6 weeks is exactly the same. So you're kind of like buying the same product based on how people can get themselves out there and kind of show the world what they do. Because the difference is, if you get somebody a result that they want and remove a problem that they don't have, you're an expert, right?
Well, but this is the funny thing is, so I'm a qualified personal trainer.
We've had this conversation before, right?
Well, yeah, we have. We have. I thought, and like, this is when I did my personal training course. I know that you hate that word, but it's the only way. It told me, it was what showed me I don't want to be one, because I turned up.
It's savage. It sucks. Like, to be fair, like people trying to start out right now in a market like this, it's not easy. Right.
But then also, like, when I got there was people that had never stepped foot, like they'd never done any exercise before in their life. They'd had some like idea. This was when like Fees Free was running rampant and stuff like that. I think, well, there was something, I didn't wind up paying for it anyway. And all these people just turned up that had never been to a gym, never done any exercise, had no background, but decided they wanted to get healthy. So they'd go become a personal trainer. And then I believe it was 6 months later, on the gym floor coaching people. And the stuff that I was learning in there, I was like, I don't agree with these things that people are like, I don't agree with the way you do lat pull downs, and I don't think that I should be looking at what food coloring's on the back of my I don't think that's right. And because I'm like you in terms of my attitude to training was always somewhat sustainability focused, especially back when I was younger and actually in shape, and you know, I was doing powerlifting, I was doing all these things, I was had a little bit more of a rhythm, and I was like having conversations with a nutrition instructor, and I was like, I get that what you're saying is probably correct, but no one's ever going to follow this. And so if you go and give them all of these things, like if you give them a list of 30 chemicals to look for on the back of food and stuff, they're not going to follow anything. Whereas if you just convince them not to go through the Macca's drive-through every day, and instead you show them you're going to actually make a difference in their life. And he's just like, that's just, you know, I'm a national mountain biking champion and a doctor. And I was like, mate, I don't care. I don't like, that's not like, how many people have you like done this practically with? Like,
the amount of stories that I could tell you about people that I've met in the fitness industry that are just like that person you just described. Like, this is the way that we do things, and that's it. And it's like, you have this belief system, and that's absolutely fine, but it's like, people are allowed to make their own choices, right? It's like the choices you make will align to what you get or what outcomes you get, right? So, I don't know. I could tell stories all day about this, but like to tell you the truth, like what made us sort of kind of go over and above and go from, being, a one man to a larger kind of business. I think it's just like being really, really clear on your values and not letting that shift. Like if, when you walk into the gym, we've got our values on the wall and it says people at the top. And it's like, you cannot run a health and wellness business without humans, right? And you can't take care of people, because essentially that's what it is, man. Like, it's like the ability to help people with their routine, right? So it's like, can we show them not a better way, but another way, right? That might work for them, because here's the thing, strength and conditioning training is not for everyone. Mm-hmm. Some people like yoga, some people like running, right? It's like, I'm there to not try and convince them, but just show them a different method, okay? Some people like martial arts, some people like, Tai Chi, whatever it is, okay? There's no one perfect way to be healthy. I think the overarching thing with resistance training is the movement of like females being strong has been massive for us. Like we kind of came in at the perfect time for that. Like when I first started coaching, it was like you would never even see a girl in the weight room, and if they were, you'd be like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? Or like, and I didn't even feel that way. I wasn't like, what's going on here? It was just like, they went on the treadmills and cross trainers and we did the weights, and that was kind of it, and that was kind of the way it was portrayed. Or aerobics, because I mean, I did my studies in like the early 2000s. We're still wearing headbands and jumping on steps, right? So, but I always thought that wasn't for me. And I love the principles of training around like stress and adaptation, and like, to make something stronger, you have to, obviously put stress on it, which is the same as everyday life, right? But yeah, just applying those principles back to people and making them understand how their body feels and how it should move. Values, people, movement was the other one, right? So like making sure that we can fundamentally do the things that humans should be able to do: run, jump. I always sort of equate back to like the zombie apocalypse. It's like, if the zombie apocalypse comes, everyone who comes to my gym will be sweet. And the other ones
they'll at least last the longest.
Totally. The slowest will get eaten first.
What do you think about? Finish your values actually.
Well, no, the only other one. So we've got people, movement, strength. So they're like resistance training, adding that stress that we're talking about. Can't remember what the last one was. People, movement, stress. Strength. It'll come to me. Give me a moment.
I'll give you the question to fill the void. What do you think about? Because this is a big thing I think about as well, which is there's a movement around females being strong, which I love. I think it's fucking cool. Because you're right, it was all cross trainers and like now all of a sudden there's these, and I saw it with the team, and like my partners really like this, like
female dominated group sessions, and they were going hard.
They were going hard,
intimidating.
Hard, And Tay's beating me at a fucking prone hold, and I'm like, Jesus, what the? And I don't know. I think that brings something good out of the right people, but then also, there's this new kind of movement, which I really like as well, which is also quite like male positive. That's like men should be capable. Like there's this big trend that's come out.
Because it was always like men go to the pub and have a yarn to talk about their feelings, right?
Yeah. But it's like, why is that the answer? And so now there's like this big, and we've noticed it, say like the Muay Thai gym, but also with this, is it's like there's this movement around like, guys, what man wants to be 45 and not able to keep up with their kid at the park? And it's like, that doesn't exist anymore.
Get their rash shoot on at the beach.
Yeah. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. So then it's like, now all of a sudden there's all these people coming through that are like, I want to be physically capable for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I would rather go get a sweat up at 5:30 p.m. than have 3 pints on the way home. And that's real cool. And it's like about being capable and powerful, but and not hiding from
connecting that to a feeling as well, right? Like there's nothing worse than feeling hungover at work. Yeah. Right. And we when you drink consistently, you don't notice it, and then when you go through a period of like being like Christmas holidays, they're coming up. We're all going to do it. We're going to catch up with family, friends, whatever, and it's real easy to crack a beer open mid-afternoon and drink through the day, right? And then eat unhealthy or whatever. January comes around and we all go, I need to do something about this. I need to change this, So we know what it's good. We know what it's like to feel good. We know what it's like to feel bad. But sometimes I think like, what's the right word? We forget that like some people just live their life like that all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they don't actually ever get to that point where they feel good. And then we meet with them 20, 30 years down the track, and they're like, I've never been to a gym before. And then I'm like, damn, man, you are going to love this.
Yeah.
It's like the way that you're going to feel, like, this is going to suck also.
Yeah.
But like and what you're talking about before was 75 hard, and I wanted to add this as well. And the other value is mindset, which I forgot before, but we'll come back to that. We'll segue back.
Yeah.
75 hard is really, really good because the first 4 weeks in any kind of exercise routine, if you've gone from doing nothing to doing something, is going to be mostly physical and neural gain, right? So your body will start adapting to the skills and you'll start feeling better, but you won't see any physical changes like if you look in the mirror, right? And then weeks 4 to 8, and I always explain this to people when they're sort of in engaging in it in a new kind of fitness journey, is like, you will actually start to see physical gains. You will start to, your arms will start to look more toned, your lung capacity will get better, you'll pick up more shopping bags, that kind of stuff. Like, there's that like tangible, right? And then sort of weeks 8 to 12 is when other people start going, damn, you look good. Yeah, and that's when you're like, I've cracked it. And like, I always kind of tell people that in the hope that I'm like, I hope I can get them to that point where they're like weeks 9 to 12, because then other people start like encouraging them to keep going, and then it's really, really easy to keep going. So, and that's why I think something like 75 hard is so good, because that's like 90-ish days, right? But that 75 is right in the middle of that.
So you have that motivation to continue on.
And then like you do that, like most people will post that day 75, or you're 2 weeks into that part of people telling you look good, and then you get that positive reinforcement, and then you're like ready to go again. But by then you've also finished and you're ready to book the limousine and drink like 30 beers. So
I did that the first time around, and man, I got fucking hammered.
It's human nature, man. It's like if the end of the thing means that I get to do whatever I like.
To be fair, like the third time I did it, I just finished and I just didn't eat differently.
No,
I just did.
You can't just continue on.
I did one less workout because I was like, there's just no real point in me going for a walk today, and that was it. Like, that was the only. And I redid, I did, and they kind of, your habits phase out a little bit, and then they come back, but you develop tools you can lean on.
Oh, totally, man. And like, I always just hope for people, it's like the two things that I would like them to get out of it is like an exercise routine and sustainable nutrition habits. And if you could take those two things on, and probably sleep, even though it's not part of the. Is there a certain amount of sleep you have to? Nah.
And it compromises your sleep some days.
Decreasing stress and decreasing stress and increasing sleep is one of the biggest like precursors to weight loss or metabolic change, because it allows your body to do the things it needs to do. And we run at such a high tempo these days with like work stress and stuff, like you're always in that like fight or flight. So it's like, can we reintroduce something? So like, I would think the reading part of it is more to bring in the sympathetic nervous system, slow things down. It's like, it's the same as people who use like a meditation app, or just go for a walk with their dog after dinner and stuff like that. It's like all these little things that just help you kind of.
So I always, and I've done it every time I've done it, I've followed a rule where I don't check my phone while I walk. So for the 45-minute walk I do every day, it's completely like, I'm not looking at Instagram, disconnected. And then there's the reading before you sleep as well. Both those things. You're so tired, you sleep early. You aren't staying up. You're not, especially in that first
You
month,
love it when you just have a book on your face when you wake up.
I had a few close calls. Like one of them, I fell asleep midway through reading. And then obviously, like if you fall asleep during reading, you got to go back to start. And I woke up at like 11:30 in this like real jacked up position. And I'm like, oh no! I'm like,
so you can't so in your mind, you can't just pick up like 5 pages the next day?
You can't pick up 5 pages the next day, but you don't have to finish.
But the world doesn't end, right? If you don't read the
world doesn't end. But it's because it's about the saying you do something and then doing it thing. And so that's what I like about the challenge most. I think the habit piece is good, but I've been back to the top. I've forgotten progress photos on day 64. I've done all sorts of stuff that sucked right doing it.
So like putting a bet on yourself. Like I always have the analogy, like, because if you have a personal trainer or a private coach waiting there for you, like you'll show up for the session. But it's like, and I would love to do this as an experiment, because I have so many clients that like see me on a regular basis and have done for a certain amount of years. If I didn't tell them that I was coming, and then they showed up and I wasn't there, they'll be like, what the fuck? But if I told them I wasn't going to be there, how many of them would come to that same time slot?
None of them.
None. Right? So it's like, it's such an interesting thing that we rely on other humans. It's like, that's why group training is really, really, what's the right word? It's like, it's addictive, right? Because it's like, you see the same people, you create this little thing. And like, going for a run with a buddy is always better than going for a run by yourself. Right? Unless you're the unfit guy, and then it's not nice. You got the whippet of a friend who's like, let's go up Repaki, and you're like, no.
I did a pretty fast marathon, and so I know what it's like to be like quick. And I'm not a runner, but I know what it's like to be like, I was actually fucking fast for a little bit. I think I ran I was fast. Like I was doing.
What are we talking like?
3:36.
Yeah, that's fast. Yeah, it's very fast.
But I've only ever done one.
440, 430?
Nah, 505.
Oh,
505
yeah, okay.
Ks. But I was doing a half at about 435 Ks. I was doing 5K in under 20.
So it's like an hour 20 or hour 25 half?
Yeah. I think it was 120.
That's entering the...
maybe 130? I think it was 130.
So I always say to people, like, you're kind of serious when you can finish a race in, like, the top 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, with my marathon, I wasn't. Fuck, people
No,
are
not a
fast.
not a marathon. A half. I would say a half around hour 30. Maybe. It depends what size it is. But, yeah.
There is some
guys
real
running,
quick
like, an
people
hour 5, right? Like, it's
There are
bananas.
some real quick people out there.
Yeah.
But I remember I was mostly concerned about the marathon pace. I wish I had my phone on me so I could check Strava. But yeah, marathon 3:36, and it wasn't a good run. I reckon I could have gone sub 3:30 on. I'd had like a couple of injuries and stuff like that going into it, but. Now I run and I'm not like that anymore. And my mate's getting pretty quick. And so I did a run with him the other day and he whooped me on an 8K, like smoked me. And I was hurting and he was chilling. I'm like fucking about to cough up blood and stuff. I was like, this is not good.
But again, right, you think about this. You go, okay, when I was at that point when I could run that fast, we go back to that same biological law. How many years ago was it? So it's like, okay, if it was 2 years ago, you've got 2 years of training to get to that point.
I think it was start of last year.
But it would also depend on the training period that you put in leading into that. So
Only
say
12 weeks.
Yeah, so if it took you 12 weeks to get there, it probably would take you
back.
12 weeks to get there again.
Yeah.
Maybe. Not with a baby.
24. Hey, I'm conscious of time.
Yeah,
So
no, it's cool.
you want to
Skip a
touch
few.
on... Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, we've
we've
asked none. So yes,
We've covered some ground, though. I feel like we've covered some ground.
To be fair, I've not done one of these yet where I've actually followed.
They are
this.
conversation starters, right?
Just in case you see them, and I knew we weren't going to, but I just thought I'd do my duty anyway. Question that I genuinely am curious about.
Yeah.
Busy kid, runs business, real strong. What do you deadlift? 280? Did you say the other day?
I've done 280 on an elephant bar, which is like a deadlift bar, but yeah, 272.5 in competition.
Yeah, right.
Which is not actually that strong for my weight class, but then I'm thinking I work with a lot of people who are elite, so it's,
You're looking at the people that represent New Zealand that you just went away with.
Yeah, or world standard,
Yeah,
which is like 400,
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like strong in shape, balance that
Yeah.
with everything else. What is involved in trying to make all of that work?
I think for me, it's like you can't teach what you haven't experienced.
Yeah.
And I often feel, especially with, playing rugby to a high-ish level, like before the earthquake, I was going to go overseas and sort of play semi-professional stuff. And my business took off instead, so I took that route. And I was thinking, what would have happened if I went that way? Like, I didn't, so we can't think about that. But it's like, when I start to learn certain techniques or certain things, it's like I will never give them to you until I've done them myself.
Yeah.
Right. So with the competitive lifting side of it, at the moment, I had I snapped my Achilles probably coming up 2 years ago, which is a significant injury. No surgery. Rehabbed it. Got it to a point where my whole mission was to be stronger than what I was before the injury. Right. Which I am now. But I think I always go back to like what would happen if it didn't happen. But it's like we can never live on these what ifs, right? So I'm picking up your arms, but I'm thinking as I go. The balance is right. I think a lot of people in the health and fitness industry get to a point where they get so busy that they let go of their own training.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like boundaries, right? It's like, if I was going to set up my perfect day in my calendar, it's like my training comes first.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't budge on. Like I will never move my training for somebody else's appointment because it's like that brings me joy.
Yeah.
And I have a Google Calendar, and you'll probably appreciate this. And it potentially could be a Hormozy thing as well. It's like the things that I do that bring me joy are in yellow.
Yeah.
So it's like
nice.
the training's in there. I pick up my son from school on a Wednesday and a Friday at 3:30, and they're in the yellow as well because we get to spend some quality time together. I do a couple of drop-offs in the morning, so they're in the yellow. And then the other thing is like other hobbies and activities and stuff that I like to do that are like not self-serving, but like, it's me time, right? So like, used to always like book out time every week to go and shoot hoops by myself and stuff like that because I love basketball. Like I love the NBA. I follow it religiously, and like, it's like that brings me joy. So I guess what I'm saying is like, when you get to a point in business where you're like, you're financially stable enough to do this kind of thing, it's like, book out the time for yourself to do the things that you enjoy, and then let everything else work around that.
Yeah.
Because for so long I still trained when I was doing those 12, 14-hour days. But I was so burnt out.
Yeah.
And, like, I was just like, I was showing up to exercise, but I was a zombie.
Yeah.
I had all kinds of problems with like blood pressure, and like I get real fainty, and it was real weird. And you know, I was doing like competitive like trail runs and stuff like that, and I was doing boxing, and I was like trying to fill the void of I think because I'd stopped playing sport, I was trying to find something else to fill that. And what I came to realize is like you just need to kind of be happy and content with yourself and what you're doing, so that your training makes you better and it doesn't make you worse. Because I was in this point of like every time I trained, I would feel like near death, and then I would like have to sleep a weekend and then prepare for like the next week of like 80 hours of work. So yeah, I definitely flipped the switch on that. Prioritize my training, family time. Business is important, and like running the business successfully is like something that I guess I pride myself on, like KPIs and systems and making sure we do things properly. But it's like that is all arbitrary if I'm unwell and can't live my life, if you know what I mean.
There's a lot in that for a lot of people, I think. And I'm the guy that puts the time in to do the things and then compromises on it.
But it's like interval training too. Like I think of it like this, like sometimes business is like, I need you right now and you need to go, right? Like we're on. And we go and we can do that for a certain period of time, but there has to be a decrease. There has to be that lull, you know? And I think after going away, I'm in that now. I'm like, I need to pull back. If I continue to go the way that I'm going, I'm going to end up like in a coffin. Not in a coffin, but you know what I mean? Like you get sick, you can't work.
And I don't like that burnt out expression very much, because I think people attach it to like a mental thing. But I know what it's like to push yourself.
Under recovering. That's all it is.
Under-recovered. You wind up under-recovered.
You don't overtrain, you under-recover. It's like you prioritize the go and not the like we were talking about before, the parasympathetic nervous system. Like, can we get into this like lowered state, not this heightened state? And we've all been there.
Yeah, for sure.
The cliff.
I've been off it. What if you were to go back? This is kind of out because we're sort of pushing towards the hour mark.
We can close this out. That's cool.
But I got one question that I need to ask, because it's one that I've asked everyone, and it's really interesting. You're back at the start. I think it was 2010?
2010 was when I first started working for myself. I'm unhireable, that's why. Also.
I understand.
Same.
2010.
Same.
You get to go back, talk to Reece. Tell him, give him one piece of advice that will shape his next 14 years positively. What's the one thing?
We'd slap him first. We'd come in hot. And then we'd have a little moment with each other. But I also think too, man, like, as bad as this is going to sound, like, I think everything happens for a reason, right? So, like, I wouldn't change it. You need to take that fall to understand. But I think for me, like, I lived a long part of that initial part focusing too much on success. Like, I need to be successful, and I need to be the best trainer, and I need to make the most money, right? And, like, I was pushing all of my energy into that basket, right? And, like, I actually got to a point, and I think it was like 2014, where I won an award as like the best trainer in New Zealand, right? And it's like I was still empty, right? So it's like, even though you climb the ladder and you get to this point and you have this status and you can make the money and you can do the things, it's like, I'm still not happy. So it's like, I would slap him and I'd be like, be okay, like be happy but not satisfied. So like keep pushing to be successful, but also like take time out to smell the roses. Like, be... Like there was a point, and this is something I will never ever do again, but there's a point in my life where I was working so much that I was paying someone to walk my dog 3 times a week. And then like I had to like check myself, and I was like, you bought a dog because you want to connect with a dog, you love your dog, like why the fuck are you making somebody else do that? Like and it was just like a real point for me. I was like, I had a cleaner and a gardener and all these things, and I'm like, you're prioritizing work over life, and like life will pass you by real quick. So I think that's my kind of perspective now, is like, it'll still be there tomorrow. Dishes on the bench will still be there tomorrow.
It's a good answer. That's probably, I've asked this question to every guest so far. That's probably my favorite of all of them. That no offense to any of the other guests, but that's I mean, I'm guilty.
Well, it's like what we were talking about before. Like if you go over the cliff and you're looking back up and you're like, where did I go wrong? It's like, you know where you went wrong. It's like, but now it's like, what can we do to fix it? So it's like, we put these things in place to stop it from happening again. And when you feel it happening again, you're like, okay, course correct.
Yeah. Nice, man. Nice. Where can people find you?
Oh, well, 33 Morehouse Ave, if you're in Christchurch, is our facility, Recreate Performance. Obviously, we're on Instagram, it's probably our main social, so at Recreate Performance. Maybe Recreate Performance Christchurch, I'd have to check that. But
if you search it in, they'll find you.
That's it. And yeah, I mean, personally, I'm more of a sit down and go for a coffee kind of guy, so don't send me a DM. Nah. Call me. Pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's a forgotten art. And actually, before when you were saying about Strava, and you're like, I need my phone for Strava. I'm massive on when I'm coaching people in the gym, or I'm like out having like a drink with someone or a coffee or whatever. I'm like, your phone doesn't need to be in this conversation. Use your memory.
Yeah.
And then we make up lies, which is even better because you're like, I think I did it in this time.
We add GST.
Then,
I'll go back and check my fucking half marathon. It'll be like 2 hours. I'll
never,
be like, oh no.
Never check your phone and keep running the story that you ran it in like 2 hours. You know, like, well, obviously 2 hours is this.
Yeah.
Three. It's a 3-hour marathon.
3-hour marathon. Yeah, 3-hour marathon.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, man. That was really enjoyable. I feel like we could have done triple the time.
I do talk too much.
No, not too much.
But also too, like, it's part of the trait of the job. Like, I literally stand around. Well, when I was one-on-one coaching all the time, it's like, it's just the art of talking shit for a long time. And here's a funny thing too, and this could be some education for anyone who does private coaching. I've used the same 3 or 4 questions with every single client I've ever had over the last 14 years to get through like a half hour or an hour session. So it's
you
like,
have to tell us what the questions are.
So the first one is just like, well, obviously you're just going to come in with like a, hey, what have you, how was the weekend, or how was yesterday, or like, what have you been up to lately, or whatever. So it's like an intro question, right?
Oh, nice open-ended.
Yeah. And then I'll get like 10 or 15 minutes in, and I'm like, what's the biggest thing you need to get off your checklist today? Like, what's the one thing that's like really winding you up that you got to get rid of? And then they'll obviously fill me in on whatever that is. And then near the like 10 or 15 minutes to go, I'm like, yo, where to from here? What are we doing after this? And literally that will get you through any half hour, 45 minute, hour appointment for the rest of your life. And you'll get some really, really interesting conversations from it.
Yeah, good questions. All right. Hey, thank you so much for coming. We've got the 20 questions episode to shoot that will be before this.
So
when it gets released. We're going to go back in time and we're going to record that, but I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good fun. But I really enjoyed that episode. Thanks, Heath, mate. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.